Hey guys, welcome back to another Gravity Ace devlog. So it's been a while. It's been, what, I think 3-4 weeks since I've put one of these out. And I think you know why. Um, Back in February, I decided, hey, I'm going to release Gravity Ace this spring. And then COVID-19, coronavirus. I'm in California. We're on lockdown. We've been on lockdown for, I don't know, it feels like forever. And along with that came a lot of, I mean, this isn't new to any of you, I'm sure, but, along with that came a bunch of uncertainty about the future, a lot of stress. Uh, Basically, March was pretty much a lost month. April was mostly lost. Here we are in May. I'm kind of getting used to things and uh, getting back into it, but obviously it's put a delay on things. And I mean, it is what it is. Here we are. Gravity Ace is probably not launching right in spring. And I don't know what the date will be right now, but basically it'll be done when it's done. Hopefully not too much longer, but I mean, none of us can predict the future, so here we are. Maybe this will teach me a lesson about putting out dates, and I should be more mysterious about it in the future. So this devlog is going to be a little different. I didn't script anything. What I want to do, I think, is just talk to you about what I'm working on right now and kind of show you not what my plans are, but basically I'm going to do some live coding here, and you can see how I go about doing some things. So let's just jump into it. One of the things that I wanted to do was build a laser gate that rotates. So I'm picturing, right now there are laser gates in the game. Let me open one of those up. This guy, right? And it shoots a laser beam and it's impassable. You have to either push a button to open it, or some of them are on a timer. It'll intermittently turn off and on. But what I wanted to do was have one that's kind of sitting in the middle of the screen, and it rotates. And what I'm thinking is it'll have a laser going up, left, right, down, and as the whole thing's rotating, it'll create an obstacle where you have to like sit in between the lasers and kind of fly around as it rotates and then exit out the other side. So I thought, okay, that'll be simple. I'll start with the laser gate, create a new rotating gate, basically copy a lot of the nodes. And I started doing this step here of just copying the raycasts and copying the beam, copying the particles, the little animation when it hits the wall. But then I thought, I should actually probably refactor this. What I'd like, I think, is to make the beam, including the animation, the particles, and the raycast, all a separate scene. And then I can just combine 4 of them on here, and it actually would be easy. So my first step then, I'm going to basically undo this, but what I'm going to try to do here is just basically refactor the laser gate and show you how I can turn some of this stuff into its own child scene. And I don't know if it's going to work. We'll see how far I get. All right, so I guess first thing I want to do is create a new scene for the beam, and we'll start it as a 2D node, and we'll call it a beam node, and we'll save it. And I have all my beam gate stuff here, and we'll just call this the beam scene, like that. Okay. So then I need a raycast 2D. Let's do that. And like one way to do this, a lot of times what I'll do is there's actually an option here where you can say right click and save branch as scene. This basically takes whatever you're clicking on and all of its child nodes and saves it as a new scene. And that would be perfect, except, and I've done that before with other things, but it doesn't quite work here because I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. Actually, I don't want that. I want this, and I want this. And none of them are parented to each other. They're all parented to this upper thing, this laser gate node. So because they're not in a tree structure, I can't just right click and say, do that. So I'm just going to recreate it here. So I need a raycast to, oh, shoot. Grab the wrong one. Raycast 2D. What else do I need? So I want this and this. So one thing I can do is I can merge. You can merge nodes from another scene into your current scene. And it doesn't move them, it just makes a copy. So I can merge from this scene, and I can take this branch, and I can merge this, and I can merge, do I need this? Beam timer, yeah, I need that. And then I want to, okay, so I think that's all the nodes I need. I need to add a script. Yeah, we'll just do that. And I want to take part of this. I want to take these out of the gate, and I want to add it here. Okay, so this code is code that I already had in my laser gate for calculating the collision point of the beam. And it uses the raycast and does some other stuff. I'll talk about it in a minute. It's depending on a global variable. Yeah, it's depending on these, so I'll need those. Here we go. Okay, so the errors are gone. Then this timer should be connected to this node here. And because I've named it beam timer, it's beam timer. Hooking it up will be easy. When I do this, you see it's already pre-filled. And now you can see here that that's connected to that signal. So this, what it does is every tenth of a second, it recalculates its collision point. Why every tenth of a second? I don't know. It's an optimization. It seemed fast enough. If I need to, I can make it do it more frequently. I just tend to not like putting things in process. Like I could have just done it here. Right? I could have done that. But then it's calculating the beam collision point, 500 times a second. And actually that's accurate. Sometimes, depending on the level, some of the levels in my game will run at 500, 800 frames per second. And I just don't need it to run that fast. And I felt like it's probably not that bad actually, but it's doing a bit of math here and some other stuff. And I just I didn't need it, and I don't want it to do that. And by avoiding process and putting in a timer, it's just an easy way to control how often it happens. All right. So now I've got a beam. Oh, you know what this probably needs? This probably shouldn't be a node. It should probably be a static body, right? Because it needs a collision. So the way that was done here is that the gate is a static body, right? Yeah, it's a static body 2D, and it has a collision for the the emitter here, the base, and it's got another collision right here for the actual beam itself, which it turns on and off. Yeah, so this should be, I'm going to change this to a static body. And I'm going to merge in that collision right there. Okay. Yeah, see, this is calling gate collision, where it's changing the size of it to fit the beam. So this should all work now. Which means I can go in here and I can delete this, right? And I can delete this. Yeah. I can delete the timer. I can delete the particles. I can delete the beam. I can delete the raycast. And I can delete the collision. And instead, I can replace all of that with my beam. Node, right? Look at that. So it looks the same. Oh, look, my raycast is pointing the wrong way. Let's fix that. So this should be pointing up. That. It's weird that the raycast 0 degrees points down. A lot of other things in the game, 0 degrees is this way. Raycast 0 degrees is down. That's fine. That's fine. Because I'm never going to actually be rotating the raycast anyway. I'm going to be rotating the beam. And as long as the beam, yeah. So everything, if I rotate this, watch, everything inside it will rotate with it. See? So it doesn't matter how these things are rotated inside. As long as I'm just rotating this thing, I don't need to even worry about the orientation of anything inside. As long as it's all, you know, what do you call it? As long as they're all in sync, right? All right. Yeah. So if well, what's going to happen? I can play it. I'm sure it's not going to work though. Oh, here's why it's not going to work. Because, yeah, see, it's calling these methods, right? I'm doing things like trying to change the beam particles, the hit particles, the pointer. Oh, that's the other thing I need. I need the pointer. The pointer is it's a line that shows up before the beam appears. So it's like a way to broadcast to the player that the beam is about to come on. It's a warning, right? So I'm going to need that. And then I can go in here and I can delete the pointer as well, because it's now part of this beam. So in here I've just got the collision for the base. I've got the base itself. Got some nodes for visualization of signals in the level editor. Got some timers. I've got a tween. Oh, this tween should actually be part of the beam as well. And the sound effect? Yeah, the sound effect should be as well. So I can merge in the tween, and I can merge in the sound effect, and then delete those as well. All right? So just looking at this visually now, I can see I've got the base, the collision for the base, and then I've got some stuff for the level editor. Got timers for turning the beam on and off, which I think I want part of this gate, because in the rotating gate, it's not going to have, it's going to have beams, but they're not going to need these timers. These timers are specific to this type of gate, so I'm going to leave them here. The beam will just be the raycast, the collision, the warning that the beam's about to turn on, the particles, the timer for calculating the collisions, tweening for the animation of the beam, and the sound effect for the beam. So that way then on a rotating gate, I can just, see, I can remove all of these and just replace it with as many beams as I'd like. Right, delete that, delete that, delete, there it is. Delete that, delete that. Do I need this? I don't think I need that either. So then I can just add as many gates as, or as many beams as I like once we get to that. Okay, so in here, you see it's doing things like turning on and off the collision on the beam, turning on and off the particles on the beam, showing and hiding the pointer, stopping the sound effect. So I think what I want to do is I want to make an API here in the beam. So I can just call beam.open and beam.close, and it does all these things. Yeah, let's see. Let's see. Hit particles. So when the beam is closed, that means you can see the full beam. The gate is closed. And when the beam, when the gate is open, then the beam is off. So to make that simpler to understand, I think in beam, I want a function called on, and I want a function called off. Right, so I can turn the beam on, I can turn the beam off. That's all the beam knows. In the gate, I'll know if I open the gate, I should turn the beam off. And if I close the gate, I should turn the beam on. Right? I think that's easy to understand. I just put pass in here now because I don't know exactly what code's going to go here yet, and it just keeps errors from appearing in the editor. Close that. Right. So here I want to just be able to say beam on, right? Which means I take all of this and put it here, right? Beam on, yeah. That. So when the beam comes on, it's going to calculate the collision point. Oh, this, okay. So this actually belongs back in here with the gate because it's the gate itself, the base has 2 frames. And let me just show you. So if you look at the base, frame 0 and frame 1. 0, 1, 0, 1. So when the gate is off, it's like that. When the gate is on, it looks like that. So that's particular to the gate, so I'll leave it here in this gate. So I set the frame number of the gate, turn the beam on. Let's do this. So this is all base laser gate stuff, and then I turn the beam on. And in my beam on, I calculate collision point, turn on the particles, show the pointer. Yeah, do some tween on the pointer, all good. Then, let's see, let's do open. So in open, I want to disable the collision. So here I want to be able to do beam.off, right? Yeah, let's do it right there. So beam off will take some of this. I'm not going to use all of this, but I'm going to copy it all just to make it easier. So close timer is actually still in the gate. I do want to disable the collision. This one stays in the base. Turn off the particles. Yeah, so those are all good. This one, hold on, I'll get back to that one. So in here, this is in the beam, right? And that's in the beam. Why do I have this not open? Let's take that out. Yeah, let's take that out. Right? So here, when you close it, beam on, open it, beam off. And in here, we're going to just do this. I think I did this because sometimes the beam would open. You could make the beam turn off, or you could make the gate open even though it was already starting. It was already in the act of opening, but I think I don't care about that in the beam itself. Like, I want to simplify the API for the beam and just have it do its thing without worrying about what the gate is doing. So in the gate, I need to probably put something in here that says if it's open, yeah, like if open, return, right? If it's already open, don't do any of this stuff. You've already opened it. And here, similarly, if not open, return, right? Yeah, something like that. So here's a little tricky part, because what happens is you call close and it starts doing some stuff. It starts a close timer, and then close timer actually has a signal to really close it, right? If you look at here, right? On close timer timeout, close real, right? So this really closes it, which does some more stuff, slightly different stuff than what I was doing before. It's kind of tricky. Tricky. So I'm doing beam on, right? What I need is, okay, so what I need is, this is actually not on. This is like beam. I'm going to rename these later, but we'll call that stage 1. And I need another on stage 2, right? And here, this will be on stage 1. And then here I'll do stage 2, right? So same thing. If not open, return. I can take most of this, copy it here. So I'm not going to need that. I'm not going to need that. Not going to need that. That. All right, that simplifies that quite a bit. And in here, I do that. Yes, yes. Yes. Right? Okay. Let's just try this and see if it works. So here you can see the laser gate itself has been significantly streamlined and simplified. The script in here also significantly simplified, and I have this API in the beam to turn it on and off. Probably I'm going to refactor this to use some kind of signal, because the close timer I don't know, maybe the close timer should be part of beam. Maybe the close timer should be part of beam. And then I can remove all of this. But then how would I admit that? I would need a signal here on beam. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. Oh, I'll do that later. Let's see if it works. First things first, let's see if it works. I'm expecting a crash. There it is. All right, what have I got here? Okay, so I've got two functions here. One is prepare for gameplay, one is prepare for editor. So when you go into the editor, it calls prepare for editor on every node. If prepare for editor exists on a node, it calls it. And in this particular case, on the laser gate, it basically just turns off the volume on the beam sound effect. That way, when you're in the editor, you just don't hear it. And then when it prepares it for gameplay, it turns it back on. So you can hear it when you're playing the game, but you can't hear it when you're editing a level. Perfect. Except sound effects beam isn't in the gate anymore. It's in the beam. So I think what I want to do is I want to say something like beam quiet. Be quiet. Naming things, right? It's the hardest part of computer science. Name silent. I don't like that. That's not a verb. Well, maybe it'll come to me. Hold on. And I want to do beam loud. Silent, not loud. Oh, mute. Unmute, right? Unmute and mute. Let's do that. So I'm going to call beam mute and beam unmute. So in beam mute, put that here. It's going to do that. And in unmute, it's going to do that. Boom. So you see the laser gate, it has this beam child, and it's calling this API on beam. Beam has mute, it has unmute, it has off, it has on, stage 1, stage 2. I'm going to rename that. We'll get to that. But basically, it has an API, and the laser gate knows about the API, and it's calling the API. Pretty simple. Let's try that again. Cross your fingers. Hey, that's good. No crash so far. See if the gates actually work. No, of course not. Alright, what do I have now? Oh, okay. Okay, so this is another API. And I'm going to do this. In my game, everything has a constant that tells the game what type of entity it is. And it uses that in a couple of different places to just, usually in collision checking, it'll use it to check, to find out what the thing is that I'm colliding with. And I think in a future game, what I'm going to do is replace this with a group. So the beam would actually be like in a beam group. So I'd know what it is. But this is what I'm using now. So I just need to give it a name. Then later, if I want to check if I'm colliding with a laser gate beam, I can do that by checking the entity type ID. This is how it goes. Oops. Try it until it works. Oh, shoot. What did I do? That was a typo. So this is a drawback, I guess, you could say, of using GDScript because it's not typed. Some of these errors you would find in the compiler, right? It would complain to you when you went to compile it. Is it any faster? I don't know. I mean, you'd get the compile error and then you'd see it, but you have to wait for it to compile. In this case, you're like, you play it. You don't have to wait for it to compile, but then you get the error. It's like compiling it on the fly or something. I don't know. I like it this way. It's fine. All right, so it's working. It's just not calculating the collision points right. Did the collision work? Yeah, the collision works. Bounce off of it. It's just not showing it's not going to the right length. It's not calculating the collision point correctly. Let's go into the game. Why isn't it calculating the collision point correctly? Should be doing it right here. Whenever oh, you know what it is? Probably because, no? See, it's calling it every 10th of a second. Calculate beam collision point. Got my raycast 2D. I suppose if I was doing this on a live stream on Twitch or something, someone could point out to me what I'm doing wrong. But I'm not. maybe next time. Interesting. Let's do... I was going to set a breakpoint here, but it's calling it every 10th of a second. It's going to just... You know what I can do? Actually, let's just do it. And then I'll unpause. Breaks. And see, it's called in here. When the timer worked. Called the collision point. It doesn't think the raycast 2D is colliding with anything. Why doesn't it think the raycast 2D is colliding with anything? Probably because I didn't set the collision mask correctly, because I didn't merge this from here. I just created a new one from scratch, right? And so the only thing it's colliding with is the player. And what I need it to do is I need it to collide with the world and structures in the world and the player and bullets and enemy bullets and enemies and basically everything in the game, right? Actually, that's not true. The raycast, I only want it to collide with structures in the world. The collision, the beam, I want it to collide with everything. So the beam itself should be, yeah, should be a world thing. Like that. Yeah. And then the raycast should collide with, yeah. Let's see if that works. Oh, I'm still in the break editor. Let's do that. Well, let's just run it. So, 1/10 of a second went by again. Still not colliding. I probably have to reload it because I've changed the object, but the level editor still has the old one, and the way it's loading them in code. It's not part of a node tree, so I don't think it's updating it. So I'm going to rerun this whole thing. Ba-bam. Let's see. All right, still not working. Does it collide? Yep. Yep. All is working, but I'm not colliding still. Why not? Collides with bodies. Because it's not turned on. Let's see if that fixes it. Oh, well, it's different. Okay. I know what's happening. So it's colliding with itself. It's colliding with the structure here. Let's turn that off. Let's have it only collide with the world, which is walls, basically. Let's try reloading it. You know, when people ask me, hey, should I learn to code? You hear this a lot, right? Like, oh, anybody can be a coder. But I think, honestly, to be a coder, to be interested in programming, you have to be willing to put up with just a shit ton of tedious BS. Just doing the same thing over and over and over again and making small incremental progress. If you can be happy doing that, then yeah, you can be a coder. If that bores the crap out of you, then maybe coding isn't for you. All right, I think it's still colliding with itself or with the base. Let me see what I can do there. Yeah. So I think maybe what I need to do is move it so that the beam isn't touching the base. So I'm just going to move it up like that. Right? Because there's the collision for the base. Yeah, it's not touching it anymore. Let's see if that works. Goose egg. Maybe this whole reloading thing isn't the problem. Maybe I'm just doing it wrong. Maybe I'll get a webcam. You guys can see how annoyed I look right now. No, at least shooting stuff still works. Oh. So I spent way too much time looking at this before I finally decided just look at the diffs, and that showed the problem right away. So the moral of the story is use source control, look at the diffs, it'll save you some time. Oh, the length of it, you dummy. It's way too short. Yeah, see, the raycast should go way out there. Right? It was too short before, it was 50. That's the default. That's as long as it's going to get. But I need it to go, I want it to reach out to here. So any wall within this distance, it's going to hit it. Now, let's see. Oh, yeah. Now it's working. And you see it, this one's rotated a little bit, right? So it's still pointed the right way. All right, everything's working. I'm going to turn off the collision shapes. All right. So I've got the gate working. And the gate itself was simplified a lot by having the beam as a child scene, because a lot of that functionality can just be in here. And now I can replicate the beam into my rotating gate and have one of them here, one here, one here, one here, and it'll be great. But before I do that, I want to simplify this API a little bit. This whole stage 1, stage 2 business. Because I don't like it. So what I think I want to do is just change that back to on, like that. And I want to merge in this close timer. Yeah, merge back in this close timer. So here, I'm going to merge in close timer, like that. And this timer, again, when the beam closes, which means when the gate closes, the beam turns on. But before it turns on for half a second, it shows a little red laser for half a second, and then the full beam comes on. That's what this close timer is. And so it shows, so when you turn it on, it shows the little pointer laser, and then half a second later, it turns on the full beam. So what I want to do, this should connect like that on close timer timeout. And I'm sure I've got on close timer timeout here, right? It does close real. So I'll do on real. And change this to on real. So my public API, I'll call on. And when I call on, it will start the timer. I need to do that. It'll start the close timer. Let's do that. And then when the close timer is done, in half a second, it's a one shot. So you have to call it, and then it won't go again until you call it again. So half a second later, then it'll call this on real. Right? No, it'll call this, which calls Unreal. I can actually eliminate this, right? Let's do that. Let's have it do, instead of calling that, let's just have it call Unreal directly. let's do the same thing with beam timer. Let's just have it call that. Refactoring. Boom. So when the beam timer, so I've got the signal here. When beam timer, it's going to times out, it's going to call this. And when on real is called when the close timer times out. Yeah. Okay. So here I don't need stage 1, stage 2. Right? I just need on. This one I don't need anything, but I still do need to call this. I still do need to call this. So what's going to call this now? I don't have the closed timer anymore. This should go away. Basically what I need to do is have the beam call this. I can remove close timer, close timer. Right? Close timer. Ooh, I'm changing a lot of stuff. Don't know if this is going to work. Right? So, but I still need something to call this. So what I need to do is have a signal on the beam call back to do this. So let's go to our beam. Let's add some signals. We'll add 2 signals. We'll add a signal on and signal off. And when it's on, I'll emit on. No, I'll do that when it's really on, right? And I'll do another emit signal off, right? So when you call off, it's going to emit the signal off. When you call on, it's going to emit the signal on after it's really on. And then in the gate here, so now my gate can look at the beam, and I have the signals here. So now I can say when the signal is really on, I can do close real. Right? So the gate will close, it'll turn the beam on, and then when the beam really comes on after that half-second warning delay, it'll emit a signal saying it's on, and that beam on signal will call this function. Kind of complicated. Yeah, let's see if that works. All right, no crashes so far. Looks like the collisions are working. You come with me. Bonk. I can go through. All right, man. Looks good. All right. That looks pretty good. So you can see I've got my laser gate, which has this base and it has a beam. The beam has all of this functionality, which includes things like, you know, turning on and off. It's got the pointer, the warning pointer. It's got its raycast. It's got its sound effect. It's got its animation, got a couple of timers, but I get all of this functionality. It's got its script, right? With all this code. I get all of that, quote unquote, for free just by including this node beam in here. And you can tell it's a inherited scene because you've got this little button here. So when I'm looking at a laser gate, I can actually open that scene just by, boom, clicking there. So I can close that, right? See, it just opens up right there. And you can even edit the children of this guy if you want to. If you want to. But, I mean, that kind of defeats the purpose. I mean, there are reasons why you would do it, but I don't need them. I don't need to do that. So I just have this child scene. And now if I wanted to, like I want to do over here with the rotating gate, I can add a beam like that. We'll call that beam 1. And I can add a beam 2, and I can just rotate it like that. And now I've got a gate, a rotating gate. It doesn't rotate yet, but one day. It's got a beam going this way, a beam going this way. I'll have another beam going that way, and another beam going that way. And then the whole thing's going to rotate. But now, yeah, that made this a lot simpler. So now I just need to put code in here in the rotating gate to rotate the whole thing, and all the beams will rotate with it. They know what to do already. They know how to calculate their collision and do their raycast and all that. And I don't have to worry about any of that here. Awesome. Refactor successful. I'm sure I'll find some weird edge cases later on when I'm, playing this, doing some debugging on it. But I think the concept works. And I've got my child beam scene here. And then I can even do things like, if it turns out later that my rotating gate, I want a different type of beam, maybe a different color or something. Maybe I'll add a parameter in here to change the width or the color. Or maybe I'll just make a whole new instance of this beam, call it blue beam or thin beam or something. And basically it would just have all the same code, but do something slightly different for these rotating gates. I don't know. But it makes all of this a lot simpler. I don't have to do any looping. I don't have to go for each beam, do this and this and this and this. No. Each beam just takes care of itself. And I just have 4 of them. Done. All right, guys. So I hope that's been helpful. I hope you learned something. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you learned, boy, John's a terrible programmer, and that's fine. But I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more videos of this type, or even if you would like to see me stream this live so you can interact with me. Maybe we can talk. Maybe you can help me as I'm programming this stuff. And we'll see how it goes. GravityAce.com. Go wishlist it on Steam. Tell your friends about it. Follow me on Twitter. And I'll see you around. Thanks, everybody.